My father was telling me if you don't change your lifestyle, you're gonna end up in jail, dead, or broken.
Charlamagne built one of the biggest platforms in Black media, but behind that success, there's always been a shadow hanging over his name. What looked like a smooth rise to fame was actually packed with serious moments that almost shut everything down before it really took off. From legal trouble to heavy accusations, his story has never been as clean as it seemed on the surface. One situation from 2001 still gets people talking to this day, and it had nothing to do with ratings, interviews, or industry drama. It was something much deeper and more serious.
My dad could have bailed me out, but he wanted to teach me a lesson.
A 15-year-old girl named Jessica Reed made allegations against Charlamagne, who was said to be around 22 or 23 at the time. She claimed she was given a drink that was spiked at a party in Charleston, South Carolina, at the Short Stay Naval Recreational Center. According to her account, things quickly took a dark turn, and she described how her legs suddenly gave out, leaving her unable to stand. She said she collapsed, then woke up believing she had been assaulted, and everything after that moved fast and serious. She went straight to the hospital, then to the police, trying to make sense of what happened. A physical exam came back with findings that showed sexual activity, adding more weight to her claims. Charlamagne was arrested on June 22, 2001, and charged with criminal sexual conduct with a minor in the second degree. His side told a completely different story. He said he left the party early and had no physical contact with her at all. DNA tests didn't find evidence tying him to the situation, and the major charge was dropped. Instead, he accepted a misdemeanor for contributing to the delinquency of a minor and received 3 years of probation. On paper, it looked finished, but the story didn't stay quiet. As his fame grew, old moments resurfaced, especially a 2015 podcast clip where he described a troubling situation involving a drink, which he later said was consensual, and apologized for how he explained it. That moment hit people in a way an apology just couldn't clean up, no matter how it was explained.
Why am I giving myself donkey today? Because I feel stupid. But I am just now realizing that a lot of us men in America have been raised on culture.
The situation got even louder when another clip popped up, this time straight from The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne was on his own platform, speaking freely, describing the first time he was intimate with his now wife, and he made it clear she had been drinking, while he went into details that had people raising eyebrows instantly. He even called his wife live on air, and she pushed back on the idea that anything was non-consensual, trying to clear the air in real time. Then came a move that had everyone talking. Charlamagne turned the spotlight on himself and gave himself Donkey of the Day, a segment usually meant to publicly call out others. Some people respected that and saw it as him owning up to his words, while others felt it was a strategic play, a way to get ahead of the backlash and shape the story before it spun out of control. For Jessica Reed, the situation looked completely different from her side. She saw a man with millions of listeners, major backing, and a platform that kept growing, while she felt her claims were never fully answered. In 2018, she tried to reopen the criminal case, but a prosecutor confirmed it wasn't happening because the plea deal and statute of limitations had already shut that door. Online pressure started building fast. A petition calling for Charlamagne's removal from The Breakfast Club pulled in nearly 20,000 signatures, but nothing changed, and the show kept moving forward. Then in 2022, Reed filed a civil lawsuit for assault and battery, but in November 2024, a judge dismissed it based on timing rules, more than 2 decades after the alleged incident. Legally, he stayed winning, but public opinion kept shifting. When Tasha K gave Reed a full interview to tell her story, it reached a whole new audience, and people started revisiting everything all over again.
Am I really gonna get caught up in this radio star, and I'm putting star in air quotes, lifestyle? Am I really gonna get caught up in the women?
Hot 97's Ebro Darden didn't rush into the conversation. He played it slow, calculated, and picked his timing with precision. While others reacted quickly, Ebro reportedly sat on documents for years, watching how everything unfolded before stepping in. He wasn't guessing. He was waiting for the exact moment it would hit the hardest and actually matter. That moment, according to the narrative, came when Charlamagne allegedly began sending cease and desist letters to people who kept bringing the situation up publicly. For Ebro, that move changed everything and crossed a line he couldn't ignore. From his point of view, it clashed hard with the image Charlamagne built over the years. Someone known for speaking freely about everyone else's business without holding back. Ebro's stance made noise because it highlighted a contrast people couldn't ignore, especially given Charlamagne's history on platforms like with Funk Flex, where nothing was off limits. Now the energy shifted, and suddenly lawyers were part of the conversation. To some, it felt like a sharp turn, especially for someone who built a reputation on speaking openly about other people's situations. That contrast didn't go unnoticed, and voices like Ebro framed it as a double standard that people couldn't ignore. Each time the case came back into public discussion, a whole new wave of listeners heard about it for the first time, and that created a clash of images. On one side, there was the Charlamagne known for pushing mental health, writing books, and encouraging growth. On the other side, there were older moments and clips that painted a very different picture, and those versions didn't sit easily together.
That has been my muse forever. That has been the person who's constantly made me want to be the best version of myself, even when I wasn't the best version of myself.
Long before The Breakfast Club took off in 2010, his path was already rough. He had been let go from multiple radio jobs, moved to New York, and worked alongside Wendy Williams without pay, holding on to the belief that staying close to the spotlight would eventually open doors. It didn't happen overnight, not even close. It took more than a decade of setbacks, firings, and rebuilding before everything finally clicked into place. Now the show reaches millions every month, airs across the country, and even earned a spot in the Radio Hall of Fame in 2020. Charlamagne became a voice powerful enough that politicians would rearrange their schedules just to sit down with him. But that success came with visible scars from the journey. One of the toughest moments came during his time at 100.3, The Beat in Philadelphia. He had only been there a few months, but was already building momentum and planning a stable move with his wife. Then came the Beanie Siegel interview, and Charlamagne gave him full space to speak freely about his issues with Jay-Z. The interview spread fast, but by Monday, everything changed. He was called into the office and told they were going in a different direction. Just like that. He never flat out said who was behind the scenes, but the timing had people connecting dots on their own. That stretch of unemployment hit hard, especially being back in the same place he once tried to leave behind. It wasn't just about losing a job, it was deeper than that. And the anxiety he had been pushing aside started getting louder until he couldn't ignore it anymore. By 2015 or 2016, he made a different kind of move and started therapy. Not because everything fell apart, but because he saw patterns in himself he didn't want to repeat. Around that time, he had married his longtime partner, Jessica Gadsden, someone who had been there through the early struggle and growth. Then things got even heavier. A call from his father during a tough week revealed long-hidden mental health struggles, opening up conversations that forced Charlamagne to confront parts of his past he had kept buried for years. While Charlamagne was growing up, none of that truth was ever shared, not even once. When he finally asked his mother about it, her reaction made it clear just how much had been kept hidden inside their home. Years of silence, pressure, and struggles were sitting beneath the surface, shaping everything without being spoken out loud. That revelation didn't erase contradictions, but it gave them a deeper meaning he had never understood before. It pushed him to move differently and step into the mental health space in a serious way. He helped launch initiatives focused on therapy access and created platforms meant to amplify Black voices in media. He built networks, released best-selling books, and spoke openly about anxiety and accountability, all while his influence kept growing. By December 2025, he secured a massive deal with iHeartMedia, locking in his place at the top. But the tension between his past and present only became harder to ignore.
He's the greatest radio personality of my lifetime.
Right.
You know, so it's like him talking on a mic, he's mastered it.
When a major rapper situation started blowing up in public, Charlamagne stepped onto The View and gave a response that had people looking sideways. Instead of addressing the situation head on, he zoomed out and talked about bigger themes like unhealed trauma, toxic masculinity, and how pain gets projected onto others. That angle didn't sit right with everyone watching. Critics quickly called it a soft pass, especially since the figure at the center of it all was one of the most powerful names in hip-hop and was facing serious heat at the time. The backlash came fast and loud. People remembered how Charlamagne had gone hard on smaller artists and public figures before, so the difference in tone stood out in a major way. Then things got even more complicated with the Kendrick and Andrew Schultz conversations, adding more pressure to a situation that was already gaining momentum fast. That loyalty ran deep, no question about it. But when the situation between Kendrick Lamar and Andrew Schultz went public, tied to comments Schultz had made about Black women, people were watching closely to see how Charlamagne would respond. Instead of bringing that same sharp criticism he was known for, he stood firmly by his longtime co-host and defended him. He gave Schultz space to explain his side, but didn't press him the way he had pressed others in the past. And that difference didn't go unnoticed. The audience quickly started calling out what looked like a double standard. This was the same voice that had strongly criticized other artists before, yet now the tone felt completely different. Then Joe Budden entered the conversation, adding more pressure. From his position in the media space, he questioned whether the message about ownership and accountability was consistent, and that critique hit harder because of the timing and everything surrounding it.
Yeah. My debates are about art. If you call me and you tell me shit like Andrew's a racist, he's a bigot, you're not gonna ever get me to buy into that. I know Andrew.
The big question people kept asking was simple. Why? Because the Black Effect Podcast Network runs under iHeartMedia, not fully independent ownership, and that detail started to matter more as the conversation grew. Joe Budden said what a lot of people were already thinking, that the message about ownership didn't hit the same when it was still tied to a major corporation. Fair or not, that critique stuck and followed Charlamagne in a real way. Even a massive deal couldn't completely quiet those conversations, and the pressure kept building as more people looked closer at the structure behind the success. Through all of it though, one thing stayed solid: his foundation, his marriage, his family, his daughters, and the partner who stood by him long before the fame ever showed up. That's the core of his story. Someone who had to unlearn old patterns and rebuild his path piece by piece. The story starts in Moncks Corner. Leonard Larry McKelvey was born June 29, 1978 in Charleston, South Carolina. But it was that small rural town about 35 miles away where everything really took shape. Life there wasn't flashy or easy, and the lessons came early whether he was ready or not. His father, Larry Thomas McKelvey, carried himself like a man with strong rules, constantly warning his son about the dangers of street life. He would tell him straight up that if he didn't change, it would end badly: jail, death, or struggling with nothing to show for it. Those words hit hard, but there was another side to the story that made everything more complicated. At the same time those warnings were being given, his father was involved in the very lifestyle he was speaking against, operating out of the same home. That contradiction didn't stay hidden forever, and when Charlamagne realized what was really happening, it shifted how he saw everything around him. That moment wasn't just confusing, it was defining, and it forced him to question what was real and what wasn't. Do as I say, not as I do, creates a certain kind of mindset, and Leonard picked up on that early. He stopped listening to lectures and started watching actions instead, paying close attention to every move his father made. That shift changed how he learned about the world, and it pushed him in directions nobody was fully controlling. His mother, Julie Ford McKelvey, brought a completely different energy. She was an English teacher, deeply focused on education, and made sure her son stayed in advanced classes from a young age. But even that came with pressure. Being one of the only black students in those classes made him stand out, and not always in a good way once school ended. Outside the classroom, things got real fast. His cousins saw him differently and gave him a hard time over how he carried himself, and after a while, he made a choice to adapt, just to survive socially. The image changed, the attitude shifted, and a new version of him started forming. School struggles followed right behind that. Summer school, setbacks, and eventually getting expelled, all leading to one last attempt to keep him on track by placing him at a school where his mother worked. That plan didn't work either. And before everything fully spiraled, something happened that he kept quiet about for years. It was something he didn't understand at the time, something that stayed with him and quietly shaped how he saw the world. When he was 8 years old, Charlamagne experienced inappropriate behavior from an adult who had married into his family and later left it entirely.
I asked her, I said, did you know Dad was going through all of this? And she said, I thought he was playing crazy to get a check.
At that age, he didn't have the words or understanding to explain what was happening. So like many kids in confusing situations, he tried to downplay it and move past it. For years, the version he shared made it seem less serious, covering up what was really there underneath. The truth didn't start to surface until much later. Watching Tyler Perry open up about a similar experience publicly hit him in a way he didn't expect and brought those buried feelings back up. At first, there was confusion, then judgment, but after sitting with it, something deeper came in. Recognition, and that shifted how he understood his past in a major way. Therapy later helped him connect dots that he hadn't fully understood before, and it hit him hard. What happened in his childhood wasn't just one moment, it shaped how he saw himself and how he responded to people. When he tried to resist that situation, he was put down and made to feel small, and even adults around him misunderstood what was really going on. That kind of experience can send a quiet message to a kid, that their discomfort doesn't matter, that staying quiet keeps the peace, and speaking up might bring more pain. That mindset followed him for years, showing up in how he dealt with people and situations as he got older. As a teenager, he started making choices from a place of survival, not clarity. He got caught up in risky situations and was arrested more than once for serious charges tied to illegal substances. The environment around him made that path feel normal, even when the consequences were right there in front of him. He saw how those stories ended for others, yet still found himself heading down a similar road until one more arrest forced him to really face it. At one point, things escalated fast. A shooting broke out, and even though he wasn't the one who fired a weapon, he was still in the car, and everyone there faced the consequences together. The charge was serious: assault and battery with a deadly weapon, and it all came crashing down at once. They showed up to his high school and took him out in front of everyone, cuffed and exposed, a moment that stuck with him. His father had the ability to get him out right away, but made a tough decision not to. He left him there for 45 days, forcing him to sit with the reality of where his choices had taken him. Eventually, his mother stepped in and helped secure his release, giving him another chance to turn things around. His father gave him one more shot, but change didn't happen overnight. He went right back into the same environment, around the same influences, moving the same way. It wasn't until another situation, involving a large group arrest, that the weight of everything really hit him, and his reaction showed just how real it had become. That was the moment everything finally clicked. Not the jail time, not getting kicked out of school, not even the warnings he kept hearing. It was that moment in a holding cell, feeling sick and overwhelmed, when it all became real and impossible to ignore. From there, he started making different moves. He enrolled in night school, pushed through, and graduated. Then came the grind, working any job he could find, from telemarketing to retail, fast food, warehouses, anything to stay moving and build something better. Somewhere in that stretch, he stepped into a recording studio and met a local DJ named Willie Will and asked a simple question that changed everything. How do you get into radio? The answer was clear: get an internship. And that's exactly what he did in 1998, marking the start of a whole new path. But that fire from his early life never fully disappeared. It just got redirected into something bigger. If you've been following this story, you already know it's deeper than just success. If you enjoyed this, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment to keep the conversation going.